Right. Good afternoon and welcome to the August 2023 Business Insights Online Networking interview. And this month I'll be chairing a Q&A session about Help to Grow. And joining me are Chris Davies and our very own Jill Smith. So firstly, if you could each just take a few seconds to briefly expand on your earlier introductions and just to indicate where you fit within the Help to Grow structure. Chris, could I ask you to respond to that first?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Chris Davies. I'm a consultant working to something called the Small Business Charter, and the Help to Grow management course is an initiative of that organisation, which basically represents university business schools across the whole UK. And my job is to come to meetings like this and talk to people like you about the course, because it may be relevant to you in your business, or it may be relevant to some of the businesses you work with or know of. So that's my role, to talk about what this thing is.
Great. Okay. And Jill?
So one of the things I do alongside the Business Kitchen and the County Business Shows is a bit of mentoring, and I've actually one of the mentors that sits alongside the Help to Grow programme, as well as being a delivery partner for the Gloucestershire Growth Hubs.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So to go back to Chris for a minute, I mean, obviously you've been into the brief initial explanation there. What does a Help to Grow training program cover?
Right. So the Help to Grow management course is unusual in that it's an example of joined up thinking by the government, which always is a surprise. The government a couple of years ago said, hang on, we've got over 1 million small businesses, and we've also got some really good business schools. But they don't often meet in the middle, because most small businesses, and I've run a small business and a micro business, haven't got time to think about going off and doing training. We're far too busy running our business. And it's too expensive. And it takes too much time. And I don't trust business schools anyway. So the government came along and put some money behind this thing. It's called the Help to Grow management course. It's a 12-week course designed specifically for smaller businesses. So these are not micro businesses. You have to have at least 5 employees, up to 250 employees. And the idea is that this is basically a management training course for people who run those businesses. And perhaps, unlike some of us, like George and myself, one or two other people have never worked in a corporate, perhaps have never had any management training at all. And the great thing about this course is, as I said, it's 12 weeks, it's half a day a week. And 3 of the 4 weeks, it's done online. So you don't even have to leave the office or step away from the business. So that's pretty good, because that's the first thing that any small business person says, I haven't got enough time, how long is it going to take? The second good thing, and some people don't believe me when I tell them this, but it's true, the course actually costs £7,500. The government pays 90% of it. So you pay 750 quid for what works out as about 50 hours of support, training, mentoring, including with people like Jill. So it's fantastic value for money. And it's a great way for people who've perhaps started a business because they love a particular thing, or they've got skills. It's grown to a particular size. You're now thinking, hang on a minute, I've never actually, I love running the business, but I've never actually had any training in some of these things I'm now having to look after. But I want something quick and practical, and specially designed for me as an SME. So it's been going for 2 years now. Over 5,000 businesses have taken part, and it's been independently assessed. They did a survey, and the feedback genuinely has been fantastic from people who've been on the course. They say it's really, really useful. The tie-in with business schools is that it's run through the business schools. But to set fears aside, it's not run by academics. It's run by people with a practical experience in business, and it's very hands-on, very practical, and it includes, as Jill will mentioned, and we'll say in a moment, up to 10 hours of a mentor helping you put in place a business plan based on what you've learned. So think of it as a sort of, this is a bit of an exaggeration, a mini MBA. It's not quite like that, but it covers all of those things, from business strategy, sales, marketing, personnel, innovation. I can say a bit more about that later, but that's basically it. It's called the Help to Grow management course. and it's UK wide. So if you're in Wakefield or if you're in Weston-super-Mare, there's a business school near you, running usually 2 courses a year in the autumn and the spring, and you can sign up and get involved in that way.
Brilliant, brilliant. That sounds like that should be a country and western song, doesn't it? From Wakefield to Weston-super-Mare. Yeah, I'm now going to ask one of the questions that's on here. So why haven't I heard of it?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, lots of people say that. Well, if it's so good, why haven't I heard of it? Well, early on, the government, I think, decided that they weren't going to spend lots and lots of money advertising this, like they used to with, youth training scheme, those of us who remember the youth training scheme and all of those sort of things. And it makes a certain amount of sense because most people this doesn't apply to. And I think the argument was that this is also an opportunity to G up the business schools to go out and start contacting smaller businesses, because from a business school point of view, this is a fantastic entry point for them to talk about their other offers. And so I think the reliance is on the business schools. And then I come in, I'm not attached to any business school, but the people like me doing this across the whole country. The idea is that it's much more important to talk about this face-to-face. It's not something you can sell with an advert. It's something that requires discussion and finding the people who are buying into what's needed. I mean, basically, if you're a business leader of a smaller business and you think, yeah, I really feel I'm beginning to stretch my abilities here. I want to invest in my business. I want to move it on. I could spend tens of thousands on training, and I haven't got time to do a 1-year MBA, but I need something. So I think that's the idea. It's more about it's very much narrow casting to people and finding people who will say, yeah, this is for me.
Okay. And touching on one of the parts, which is the growth action plan. Yeah. I'd like to know a little bit more about how, a growth action plan section is structured and how that would benefit people who are in, say, the smaller side of that target market as far as business goes.
Yeah, well, it's called Help to Grow, and that can be defined in many different ways. I think it could be I want to get bigger. It could be I want to not get bigger but be more profitable. It may be I want to be as profitable but not work as many days. So growth, that's the first thing. I mean, growth can be what you define as growth. So it's your growth plan. I mentioned it's 12 weeks. There are basically 4 modules. The first module is called Strategies for Growth and Innovation, and covers things like winning new markets, digital adoption. That's been quite a big thing, because this is also one of the reasons the government's doing this is about productivity. We hear the government banging on about productivity. If you could improve, and apparently I'm told that the research shows that getting some proper management training and support can improve your productivity as a small business by 10%. Yeah. Which, is basically 10% straight to the bottom line. Pretty good stuff. So, but going through the course, at the end of that course, you are encouraged while you're going through the course to either update your business plan if you have got one, or to write one if you haven't got one. And we probably know lots of small businesses that don't actually have a business plan beyond win business and be profitable. And then to support that, you also have, as Jill will talk about in a minute, a mentor to help you make that your business plan. So it's your plan for growth, and growth is defined by you. So that's a key part of the program. But it also looks at how you're engaging with customers, how are you motivating your team, and have you got the right processes in place? Have you got the right financial strategies? So it really is covering everything about running a business that's more than you and 2 others. It's 3 or 4 others It's when you're starting to really grow a business and make it sustainable and resilient. I think that's another key word that the people are keen to talk about.
Resilience, massive at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
interesting you should mention, as Jill will talk about in a little while, and having spent part of my work career working in continuity at Radio 2 and the BBC, I can now seamlessly segue over to Jill. And just to say, Jill, as the in the mentoring side of things, could you please explain a little bit about the mentoring part of the Help to Grow program, please?
So the mentoring program sits alongside, is intended to sit alongside the 12 weeks of the course. And the idea, and I'll explain that a bit more in a minute, the idea is that there is a mentoring session each week of the course, which is fine in principle. Based on my experience with my mentee that I've just finished my pieces with, my mentee did her course in September, October, November. We did the 10th mentoring session about 4 weeks ago, because it's great having the half day, but the mentoring is over and above that half day. She runs and owns a farm shop. You hit Christmas, take 3 weeks out the diary, there isn't room to breathe, let alone do a mentoring session and get any focus on things. So it does come down to the mentors in terms of how flexible they're prepared to be in working with the mentees. And we didn't do our sessions. Some of our sessions were much closer to 2 hours, because if you're in the middle of trying to solve a particular challenge for a business, then you can't look at your watch an hour and say, right, well, okay, Guy, we're going to finish now because we've had our hour. I mean, it just doesn't work like that. It's very relational. It's very supportive. It's all about asking lots of questions, posing challenges, and just helping the business owner work out what the next piece is to do, and not overwhelming them with a long list of 300 or 400 things that they need to do, and they just go away and can't get any of them done.
I guess in an ideal world, it would work best if the mentoring slots are going and running in parallel with the actual program being delivered. But obviously, if you can pick up and if you have got the relevant information from those parts of the program to do the mentoring as and when, then that can work just as easily, I guess. How does an actual mentoring session work? What happens?
I can only talk about the way my mentoring sessions work, and I would have to own up to being probably not a pure mentor, because I'm a bit of a problem solver and I can't resist problem solving. And really, as a mentor, you're not really how you're supposed to operate with your mentee. But that was what my mentee wanted, answers and wanted ideas and things. So we were very much doing. So what we would do at the beginning of each mentoring session is I ask a classic question, and anybody that's worked with me will know this, is, in order for today's meeting to be a success, what do we need to achieve by the end of it? And that might be based on something particular that's come out of the Help to Grow course, or it might be something that's come up subsequently based on that, but actually happening for real in the business. Because as you imagine, a farm shop is quite diverse in terms of its revenue streams. It's got staff, it's got floor plans, it's got a coffee shop, it's got suppliers. There's a whole raft of things that then fit into the piece. So you're really led by the mentee. What is it they need to get out of the session to feel that they've had value from that hour and a half, or whatever it is. So I'll share templates, I'll provide links to good resources if they're appropriate to the session. So
got it. Oh, fantastic, great. And how long afterwards would you expect to see kind of like discernible results as part of this is a question for both, bringing it back together a bit. How long afterwards would you start to see results? What evidence is there to show that Help to Grow does actually make a difference?
Well, funnily enough, I've got some figures on that. Because you're right, because again, having run a small business myself, one's incredibly cynical about these schemes. But they, as I said, there was an evaluation report done actually in July, just so basically covering the first 18 months. What that said is that so this was filled in by people who'd taken the course, and basically six months after completing the course, over 9 out of 10 said they had greater confidence in managing their business. They had more understanding of the factors that were driving productivity. 85% said they got a better understanding to how to improve operational efficiency, and more than 2/3 said they'd made changes to the way they manage, organize, or operate their business. 3/4 said they had the skills to manage their employees over the next 3 years, compared with under 1/3 before they started the course. And this is the last one. 90% of the people who went on the course said they'd be likely to recommend the course to another business partner. So frankly, for a government scheme, I'm not saying this, for a government scheme, it's pretty bloody amazing. I mean, I've seen the results, and I mean, genuinely, it really does seem to be a good course that a lot of thought has been put into, and making sure that the content is right for small businesses. I think that's key.
Oh, fantastic. That's great. I am always, as I think you are, I'm reading between the lines, Chris, slightly cynical of statistics and of figures and everything. But when you get a bulk of statistics like that, all looking at the same quadrant within it, then they really, really do start to stack up. That's quite amazing. In fact, my best quote about statistics is Vic Reeves, who said that 88% of statistics are made up on the spot. That's brilliant. You can start that, because that will focus on the statistics that really matter. And if those are the small amount of statistics that you get out of the top that really matter, then they're the best ones.
Yes.
So, no, that's brilliant.
I think another quick one, another good one, was that I think it's not in my list, but I know this, that over 70% of people said that even that within 6 weeks of starting the course, so they hadn't even completed it, they'd started to implement some of the lessons that they picked up. And just to tell a very brief point, I worked, when I started work, I was in a small consultancy and received absolutely zero management training, but thought I knew a lot about doing what I was doing. And it was only when I went into corporates, and George will know this, working for people like Mars and so on, suddenly a corporate actually invests in proper management training for its sort of middle managers and senior managers. And it was only then that I began to realize how little I knew about actually managing things. And it was those skills, frankly, that I learned in corporates that I was then able to apply when I went back into small businesses. And so I often say to people, I think this is a great course for smaller businesses who haven't had the opportunity to have the sort of training you would get in a big corporate at a huge cost, frankly. And you know, it really does seem to make a difference for people who are trying to make sure, as we said, that their smaller business is resilient and can grow in whatever way people want their business to grow.
For my particular mentee, you know, a couple of the changes that happened during the piece were there were two things really, I suppose, which were key learnings. One was how important it is to take out time to work on the business. You've got to have this thinking time. You've got to spend time on your strategies. And what I did with this lady and her sister, because they were co-owners of the farm shop, was we worked out a way of carving out their boundaries around the business and making sure that they had techniques in place so that if they were in the business doing some of the working on, their staff knew not to disturb them unless the place was burning down, you know. And it's little things like that you start having that time every single week. You spend half an hour looking at your numbers, or you spend half an hour on your floor plan strategy or your supplier strategy. It's those small changes make big differences. So if you measure too early, you won't see any difference. If you 6 months after, you'll see a difference. If you measure in another year's time, that's when all these small pieces start fitting together, and you actually start seeing the benefit of taking that time out to invest in yourself and your business and things. And I agree with you, Chris. You know, that definition of what growth and success looks like is so personal to every individual. It's really, really important that everybody owns their own definition of success and doesn't feel they have to justify it to anybody else, because it's nobody else's business at the end of the day.
Yeah. Could I come in very quickly and just add a couple of things, because Jill's right. The other bit of feedback, it was really interesting feedback. One of the things that people valued most, which they hadn't appreciated they would when they started the course, was, as Jill said, the ability to just actually spend time away from the business, thinking about the business. Usually those of us who run a business or run businesses, you spend your entire time thinking about the business, and people said it's incredibly useful. So remember, it's only 1 week in 4 that you actually spend half a day away from your business, usually in your local business school, depending on where the course is being run out of, with 15, 20, 25 other businesses from all other sectors. It's cross-sector. And what's useful is you then have a bunch of people that you can chat over issues with who say, oh yeah, funnily enough, we have that problem, and you begin to realize that the challenges you're facing are the same as other people's challenges, even if their sector is completely different. And the feedback was that was one of the most valuable things that people got out of it, actually. And when you complete your course, you're signed on to run by the Small Business Charter. They run an alumni network, and they keep getting people together at regular intervals, so you can keep in touch with the other small business people you got to meet. So it does seem to be a generally useful thing. And as I said, I realize it won't be relevant for everybody, because you've got to have at least 5 employees. But all of us on this call are in touch with all sorts of small businesses. So I mean, we may well know, other businesses where they might find this useful. And I've stuck up in the chat ways to find out more online. You can register interest without any commitment and find out more about the course and when the next course is and which business schools near you are running it. So do have a look.
Well, that's actually saved my next question, in fact.
Okay.
On that, which is great. One comment that I'd make is, I think a really, really useful statistic, and this would be a legacy statistic, would be to find out how Help to Grow has affected and improved staff retention levels. That's not something that you can quantify when you're within the course, usually in those kind of like first year necessarily, but year 2, year 3, as you put the systems in place, as you put the plans in place, how that has helped keep the staff that you want to keep on for longer. Because one of the big things that eats into any company's profitability is having to replace key members of staff.
Yeah.
So that's something that I think would be incredibly credible as an on-selling tool into businesses of this size. Because like you say, if you've got a business of 5, 10, 15 people, you've got 3 or 4 key people in there. If one goes,
absolutely,
you're a bit knackered for a while. So you're wanting to make sure that you're keeping them. Listen, I was just going to ask, does anyone from the floor have a question for Chris and Jill on this? We've still got a few minutes, so please do say.
I don't have a question as such, but it's, it is interesting, when you said some of the stats, you can increase productivity by 10%, and I think the word productivity, people just think it's some word, and they don't actually understand what productivity to them actually is. And when you get to understand what productivity means to you in your industry, in your bit,
You've actually gone completely Dalek on us, Paul.
What was he saying about robust internet?
Right,
the double talk.
Sorry.
It only happens on Zoom. It doesn't happen on Teams. It only happens on Zoom. So what I was saying is productivity is like one of these magic words. What is productivity? Everybody mentions productivity, but what is it to those people within their particular industry? Is it increasing a system by, everybody gets 5 minutes, more back a day, So with the internet, if we can save everybody 5 minutes a day, one person, that's 460 hours, is it? No, £460 a year you'll save per person,
Yeah.
the government gave money to roll out internet because they believe every pound they gave, they would get £14 back for every pound. That's, you know, and if someone gets told your productivity, you know, you're currently at £5 productivity, but you can do 10% or increase it by 10%, so you get £6-7 productivity. People relate to that, and it's bottom line, you know. So it's not necessarily a question, but it's, oh well, it can be. How do you explain productivity, you know, rather than it just being productivity?
I think that's a great point, Bob. I think productivity, the calculation of it and the presentation of it is different. It's not just sectors, it's different to absolutely every single business, because every single business has got this set of factors where there will be a certain commonality. But a lot of the factors, and this is human factors, is physical factors, location factors, all sorts of different things, you know. And some of the factors could just be how much of what we actually earn is directly as a result of what we're doing with our clients, and how much of what we earn is just lost and is dead space. And everyone's got a different statistic on that. That's a great comment. That's a great one. We've still got 3 or 4 minutes. Does anyone else have any? What about yourself, Karen, from the HR point of view, and from that point of view, if you're talking to some of your clients who fall within this bracket, who are, and I talk possibly specifically about the staff retention side that I alluded to a little while ago, what sort of thing do you think some of the businesses that you're involved with might want to do if this was presented to them as a choice?
Well, I mean, just going back to your point about when people leave, the average cost of losing a person and recruiting is about 30,000. That's including man hours to recruit, the loss of productivity, as well as kind of all that training time and everything. So people don't actually realise how much it does cost when you have somebody leave the business. And management is usually the key factor in people leaving. It's not around pay and reward and all of those kind of things. It's about the management and the way that they feel that they are within the business. So it's something, I mean, I've got one client in particular that I'm going to speak to about this, but it's around, you know, a lot of the people that I speak to, they're at that kind of 10 to 40 employees bracket, and they've kind of come at it from being one person, a couple of people, and they're bringing on people and they're growing and they're doing the best they can, but they don't necessarily have all of the tools to manage people. And they've got the best intentions, but you see it throughout every business. I was speaking to somebody yesterday and they were saying that, you know, we've got a real issue with people management because they're great at what they do and they're technically brilliant, but actually they've got to a point in their career where they've been put into a management role and they can't manage people. They don't really want to manage people. And it's about how you equip them with the tools to do that to the best way possible.
Yeah. Accidental managers.
Yeah, and there's a lot of them in every business.
One of my best friends who ran a very, very successful food flavoring business, the description that his wife gives is that he was a walking HR complaint. He should not have had any interaction. He was great with clients on the sales, and he could do the technical side of things, everything. He's a really good buddy of mine. He's the most politically incorrect person I know apart from myself. So we have great fun on the golf course, but literally if he was in an office environment, he would be told not to talk. So yeah, you can, but as a chemist and as a flavorist and everything like that, bloody marvelous. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a sales director.
I'll find out who he is because he's not linked to me on LinkedIn or anything like that.
I had a sales director who I had to kick under the table during interviews because he would ask questions that would have got us in tribunal.
Yeah, and you have to be so careful. But quite often people are asking these questions totally innocently.
Yeah.
Because they're coming at it from a personal point of view, you know, kind of like, you know, asking someone, are you married? How many kids have you got? How old are your kids? This sort of thing, just getting to know you. Can't do that anymore. Oh, your kids are 1 and 2, are they? Oh, okay. So
When are you getting married? I see you've got an engagement ring. When are you getting married?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
Which
what,
are nice, innocent questions, but you take them out of context. Yeah.
what you're exactly right. One of the lessons I certainly learned when I got proper training was, was beginning to understand that not everyone thought the same as me, which, was a huge shock. But yeah, one of the modules in this course is about employee engagement and leading change and building a high performance workforce. It's all these issues that we talk about. How do you actually, it's basically how do you begin to help people manage others who have never managed anybody in their life and just think, well, don't you just do what I do? And I think, and certainly from having worked in a small business as well, that's a huge challenge, isn't it? Developing your middle management and getting them to be able to manage. And as you say, Karen, it's those days when it's when you get to the size where suddenly you can't be touching every bit of the business. You have to give it to other people. And that's
when you've got other people in key roles, and
exactly.
You've got 2 or 3 of you plate spinning doing 2 or 3 roles. It's when you get those key roles there that you have to liberate people and let them do them.
Absolutely.
Guys, this has been fascinating, but we are literally just about on time now. So I'd like to thank Jill and Chris for all of their input into this. All the details as far as the links go and everything, hopefully we'll be able to get them up there by the end of the session. And I know that Help to Grow are going to be around in various different guises at the forthcoming show at South Gloucestershire at UWE on the 8th and 9th of November. Shameless plug there. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending the interview, and we'll go back into the room now and I'll